Okay, I think we are good. Well, thanks everyone for bearing with us as we get going. We've got a few people on Zoom. We also have the guru of the bike trails, Jared White, on from the Parks Department. They'll be talking to us a little bit about the trail. I'm going to dim the light so you can see the screen. A little better? Yes. All right. Well, before we get going, thanks everyone for attending. If you want to tell us a little bit about, what brought you out here tonight and what you kind of want to get out of tonight. We'll start on the left.
Oh, thank you. I'm Joan Long. I certainly care about trails. I served on the Council for 5 years. Jared White is my very good friend.
Good.
And had the pleasure of chairing it my last 2 years.
Okay. Great.
I've been awesome across process.
Okay. So I'm going to call you out real quick. So I told a story at the last meeting that I was an original Lake Highlands Trail homeowner on Royal Highlands. And I'll say this later. The first thing I did when I saw that trail about to be built, I called a real estate agent or emailed him. You were the one I emailed. Do you remember that? Like years ago, I'm like, hey, they're about to build the trail. What's it going to do to my property value? And is it a good thing for the neighborhood? And she's like, your property value will go up. You didn't know how much by this time. But yeah, so thank you for coming. It did, yeah. Yeah, it's sold like 3 times since then. So, and go ahead.
I'm Susan Aaron. I just ride trails, and I just want to kind of hear more about it. I live in the area of the trail too.
Great.
All Seegers, also trail rider, spend a lot of hours on all the East Coast trails. I'm just excited for the opportunity to make connections to other parts of the city and beyond.
Yes.
Without having to get on the
Yes. Very good. So thank you all for coming. We do have a few people online. Not going to be able to have them introduce themselves based on the format here, but we're going to record this so we can share it with everyone afterwards as well. So let's see here. So the Friends of the Lake Highlands Trail. We do have trail extensions coming, so it is important that we start to organize a group that can actually get some things done with the trail. So one of the first things that we talked about as a purpose is to educate the residents around the neighborhood and people that live near the trail about how you can use the trail. And then also to promote the care of the trail, because we know, like many things, once it's built, it needs to be maintained. And that's kind of part of the structure of the Friends group, where we'll actually go ahead and take care of a lot of the weekly, monthly, maintenance type things that the Parks Department doesn't take care of in different places. But at the end of the day, Friends groups like the Friends of Lake Highlands Trail will take care of it. That's the last part. So that's what we need to do is raise some money. Is we are going to say hello. We're going to hear a trail extension update from Jared White. We're going to talk about a survey that we sent out a few months ago, and we have about 80 or 90 participants in the survey from a lot of important organizations and people in the area. We'll take questions, and we'll talk about next steps and moving forward. We have a few people to thank. Ben Lauer kind of kicked things off with the organizational structure. Mark Holmes, Carolyn Bray, Sylvia Riddell, John Alspaw, Susan Morgan, Rob Stewart, who is our District 10. But we needed to take it to the next step, get more involvement to move things forward. How I got involved is I've lived on the trail, before the construction, and I was a former pro triathlete, raced the Hawaii Ironman 4 times, a couple different things. I have kids that live in the area and want to see them to continue to use the trail. Move it over there. So the trails are built with funds from various sources that may include money from bonds, TxDOT, different places like that. And then Friends Group maintain the operating expenses. So trail gets built, then you have to actually put things on.
Park Department has operation and maintenance built in on the
Correct.
trail, right?
Correct. Yeah, they do, I would say, Jared could probably speak to this better in a moment. They do the minimum that they need to keep it. Organization or neighborhood wants to put in specific landscaping or a different, shading area or things that weren't in the original plan as it was built, then it would be on the Friends Group.
But aren't those restrictions still in place from
The restrictions in terms of height of trees
Right.
and how close you can do something to the power lines.
but no shade structures?
From what I understand, it would have to be very short. But we're kind of waiting to see what the plan looks like,
Sure.
and then we can figure out some of those details. Okay, I'm excited about this. I'm not sure what the- So we do have an agreement with the Parks Foundation. It allows us to not have to form like a 501c3, but we can accept money on behalf of Friends of Lake Highlands Trail and then use that for appropriations. So people basically would write them a check with the Friends of Lake Highlands Trail. Right now, based on the organizational structure, file a beautification agreement, which is a trail maintenance agreement. And part of that is telling the city what we're going to volunteer to do as an organization. So we felt that doing a survey first to get some feedback, having some public meetings. So trying to get some work.
So a question,
Sure.
try and give us an example of what the city would not do. One of the recurring problems is because on different parts of one of our creek trail that end up with mud on them, and then that dries in the summer. Sometimes it disappears within a week. Areas large ones that months and months ago still out. So is that an example of something we might go do? If I ever think of it,
Sure.
flat show, 2 hours, then everybody enjoys it from that
Right.
point forward until the next time the
Yeah.
sledge comes over.
Yeah, in that specific instance, Jared could probably address that a little bit better, but the way I would conceive of it is if you're out riding the trail and you see an area that needs some assistance, to contact the Friends Group, who would be the liaison to the Parks Department, and figure out if that's something that we need parks and code compliance and things like that to come out to. A great instance is over at the Royal Oaks Country Club. I was riding this weekend, and separate the golf course from the trail has basically collapsed onto the trail. So, as a citizen, I notified 311, I notified the Trails Group, Trail Group, and so they're following it up. So it kind of is something that you can't always follow up on something like building a people involved. But for the majority of it, it would be beautification, adding flowers, shrubs, more wildflowers, more park benches. There's been some talk about some other things which we'll see later. So kind of varies. So some of the things that we kind of need to do to move forward is we actually need positions. We do have bylaws that have been authored and approved, and we're actually over there. They haven't been published. We've been waiting to get them approved when we have our next meeting, but they're over there to review. And so we need to elect a president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So we are looking for volunteers. So Dallas Parks Foundation, that's who we're working with. Donations can go to the Dallas Parks Foundation, Friends of Lake Highlands Trail. Scan the QR code, and we do have some fundraisers coming up to start this capital fundraising drive. So one of the things we're doing is we partnered with Lake Highlands Restaurant Week, which is a week where you can eat out at 7 different restaurants in Lake Highlands. And a part of the proceeds will go back to the Friends of Lake Highlands Trail, as well as Feed Lake Highlands and Kids Youth. So it's a nice way to eat out, give back. There's going to be a happy hour that we're going to do at, there's the restaurants, the 7 restaurants, and we're going to do our happy hour at the Lake House Bar and Grill. Meet other advocates for the trails, raise a little bit of money. It's just you just eat out, so it's not like you have to write a check or anything. Just have a good meal, have a drink, meet some of your neighbors. So we do have a couple committees that we're looking for chairpersons. And those three committees are beautification and landscaping. So we would want someone that could provide information, someone you don't have to have a green thumb necessarily, but could help with mulching and getting flowers planted, some bigger projects. Communication with the neighborhood. And we definitely want someone that can do events and fundraising. We know this isn't going to be something that we just do one time, and as the trail extends and continues, we're going to need to have different events and different fundraising. So we'll see on the survey what some of the different events are. So if you're interested, you can email me, Facebook, whichever, comment on the trail page. And so a couple other things before we get into Jared's presentation. It ties together all the trail organizations. So it pulls together Friends of Lake Highlands Trail, Santa Fe Trail, White Rock Trail, SOPAC, Cottonwood, Katy, everyone that's got a trail, and ties together the loop. And so here's a few of the trails that are tied in. And the loop is what you're excited about. So the loop is going to connect all the trails and then eventually connect out the foot. So you'll be able to ride Dallas bike trails in a protected area for the most part for miles and miles. We do need a liaison. Right now, we're kind of serving as that, but we'd like to share that with someone else. So if you're interested in meeting other advocates, it's a quarterly meeting, and then providing updates about our trail to the DTC, and also getting feedback. A lot of things they've really helped us with is organizational structure and feedback on how to work with the city and so forth. Okay. Let's see if we can get Jared on here.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me all right.
We can. I'm going to turn it. Yep.
I will say, I think this situation may have resolved, but you had, I don't know if your site got hacked, but it looked like there was a couple of bots. They were saying all kinds of crazy stuff on the chat. So your recording's going to be very interesting. I don't know if y'all were hearing that at the Recreation Center.
No, I think the monkey just left.
Yeah, if you hear something come through while I'm talking, I promise you it is not me.
I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host.
Okay, here we go. I'm toggling between, there might be a bit of a delay. So hopefully you're seeing a nice title slide for the Lake Highlands Trail.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So anyway, thanks, Brian. Thanks, y'all, for letting me speak tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had got myself double booked, and I could not be able to get out there in time and then be able to get back downtown. But I want to talk to y'all about the Lake Highlands Trail. This is the extension that we're working on. It has already, this is a project that's been around for a while. It was funded several years ago. We did get some federal funding. There's that. So we got some additional funding that which kind of added a bit of a time, but it allowed us to have more of an extended project. So I'm just going to kind of go through this. I'll try to move slow. Hopefully, again, like I said, there may be a bit of a delay. There's a map I have shown up here that shows the various stages of this project. So there's kind of an east-west portion, if you will, that comes from the White Rock Creek Trail over by Walnut Hill, that then follows along the Encore transmission corridor. And then there's kind of a north-south element that goes from the existing section from over by the high school that goes down south to the Lake Highlands Town Center and to the DART station, and then they do connect to each other. This is just kind of some background. Like I said, we were very successful in getting some federal funding for this. Our original bond funding was $2.6 million. We're able to get another 5.6 in federal funds for a total of almost 8.3. So it allows us to do a whole lot more than what we could have done with just our bond funding. So we can actually build out more of the project. Timeline. Basically, we are at construction, so we're just going through the last bits of getting contracts underway to get the contractors out there to start construction. So hopefully within the next a few months, you'll start seeing some mobilization on site. It's a big corridor. I don't have what the phasing schedule is. That's going to be worked out with the contractor once they start getting mobilized on what works best for them on how they can get materials and how they can start doing work. But you should start seeing some activity again within the next couple of months or so. But when we say construction starting in May, basically that we're releasing the contract to begin construction, so they'll get the contractors out there. And then we're just going to kind of walk through kind of the alignment itself. So again, here's the overall. You've got the White Rock Creek Trail over here on the kind of plan left, and then the yellow line is the alignment that starts to head back toward kind of where y'all are at the recreation center. And then there's the north-south piece that runs along. This gets confusing. The street, White Rock, easy for me to say, White Rock Trail, not the trail, White Rock Trail. So there's the North Rias Moss on the way, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, but it just shows the alignment. So we start over by the Fair Oak Service Center, we peel off, start heading to the north, we cross underneath Walnut Hill. And Brian, tell me if I start going too fast, because I don't know if there's a delay or not.
Okay, yeah, I think you're good.
Okay. Again, just some general elements. This is, where we intersect. We'll have some boardwalk section. As we all know, the White Rock Creek Trail goes underwater. It's in the floodplain. So we're going to have a raised section that goes underneath Walnut Hill to alleviate that. This is just an example. This is not necessarily what this will look like, but that's kind of an example of a boardwalk.
Hey, Jared, can you talk about that for just a moment?
In what respect? Just the fact that we're just raising the trail up a bit? I'm sorry, this is kind of pivoting a little bit too much here.
Sure. So that's an existing part of the trail, though, right? Behind
This will be a new section. So let me go back up a couple pages here. So the trail does go underneath Walnut Hill. So you've got the existing trail that this goes up to the north. Then we're gonna, at this area by the Fair Oak Service Center, we're gonna kind of head off toward the northeast. So we'll have two undercrossings underneath Walnut Hill. So that's why this one's going to be a little bit different because it's not going to be at grade like the existing section. And then we keep going. You get over to Arborside. Let's see. Some of this is a bit redundant. Anyway, kind of zooming in, we follow the street. We're actually narrowing Arborside. Arborside's really wide. It does not need to. It's only 2 lanes. It's built. It could be 4 lanes for as wide as it is. And so we want to preserve the trees and whatnot on the park side. So we're going to bump out into the street and narrow the roadway down. You'll still have 2 lanes. It just won't be as wide as it is currently. Oops. Sorry, so kind of see what that looks like. So again, this is kind of the new roadway. The curb is back here, the existing curb. So we're taking this section of roadway out. But you still see you have got 30 feet of roadway here. So that's more than enough for 2 lanes of traffic. Then after we get onto Arborside, that's when we switch into the Encore transmission corridor. This is kind of what, kind of typical, kind of what we're used to, the existing Lake Highlands Trail section over by the high school. It's also in one of these corridors. One of the differences is, and so here, again, we're Arborside, we come up to this is Abrams, number 4, about, and then we continue on over towards Skillman. So we do have a lot of roadway crossings, and so Abrams is a big one. So think about when you're driving down Abrams, if you're heading, so you have northbound in this direction, if you see my cursor, southbound, you have a kind of retaining and sound wall over on the west side of the road. So what we're having to do is we're having to raise in order to meet the roadway. Because this neighborhood sits down below the road. This is not a bridge, it's just elevated. And so we'll have an elevated section of trail that comes up to the roadway. We are putting in new signals. So the signals that we're putting in are what we're calling the Hawk signals. So you've seen them out there on Adelia and some other streets where the signal head itself is dark until it's activated, then it goes to a flashing yellow. It goes to what we're putting in here at Abrams. So you will have a signalized crossing. So traffic will have to stop. Kind of a cross section of what that looks like from the Abrams perspective. And then this is also from the neighborhood or from the transmission corridor. So we're going to cut the sound wall and build up the, we're kind of looking at this in kind of concept view. So we're, ramping up in order to get across, to meet the grade of the street. So over by Schofield School and the church, we're having a bit, we found out just recently that the church has an agreement with Encore that dates back to the mid 80s for the use of that Encore corridor as parking. So we're just going to have to do a kind of a realignment of the trail. Nothing major, and as you can see here, the trail has some bends to it. North is up. We'll just have to straighten this out as we head this way towards Abrams, as we head back to the other direction, because they do have an existing agreement with Encore to park within that for whatever their uses are. So there'll be some modifications through here, but we can adjust that during construction. We do have to get into the alley for a little bit. So as I pan down here, and we've done this a few times. We've done this on the existing section, and we've done on some few other trails. We hit these big substations, and we can't get around them. So we have to kind of slip into the alley for a little bit, and then we'll kind of rejoin the corridor on the other side. So we'll be looking at this on what signage may be needed, if there's any traffic calming. We're working on this on the North Haven Trail, where it's a very similar section where you've got homes that have rear entry garages. So there's that interaction between trail users and cars. Everyone's moving slow, so it's fine. We haven't had any issues yet, but we just need to keep an eye on it, and there may be some signage or something we need to work on. So the trail continues on. We get over close. This is Arbor Park. We get over by getting closer to Skillman. We cross the streets. This is where it gets a little tricky because it's hard to get, and let me get my map to load here. It's hard to get across Skillman for a number of reasons. You've got the transmission lines, you've got DART, you've got a pretty significant grade change. If you've been over here on the west side of Skillman looking toward the east, that area sits way much higher. So how do we get up there? So what we're going to do is we're going to have to come down, widen sidewalks along Skillman, along the west side, and come down and cross at the intersection with Church. So we're trying to widen everything out we can along Church and Skillman to provide as safe as a facility as we can, because we can't make it looks like this is such a short distance for we have kind of the number 1 to the number 3, but again, you can see there's transmission corridors and DART and a really significant grade change there. This is just showing how we're going to come along Skillman. We're going to widen the sidewalk out. There's, they have these homes that back up. There's an alley, so we'll be widening that out. You've got a bit of a barrier there already, so we'll be maintaining that. Church Road, we're just trying to widen the sidewalks as wide as we can along Church. We can't. Unfortunately, we can't take any lanes out. We need all that capacity for the roadway itself, so we're trying to widen all the trails out, the sidewalks out as we can. I'm sorry, I'm really congested. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm transitioning from winter allergies to spring allergies, so if you'll excuse me. Now, when we get over by the high school, what we're doing is, so you see the street, White Rock Trail, is, again, it's really wide, so we're just going to extend out into the street. You still have plenty of room to maintain a 2-lane roadway, but we can do an actual 12-foot trail. So those bike lanes will probably be coming out, and we'll just do a 12-foot wide trail on the west side next to DART. And then speaking of DART, as we head south, we'll follow the street White Rock Trail along the west side. So you can see a schematic here where you've got the creek that goes through there, you've got the retaining wall. So again, we're going to be kind of on another boardwalk structure to try to mitigate any impacts to the creek and to the trees through there. So we have a bit of an elevated structure. Again, we'll be separated from DART. And then continuing south, so in this photograph, this is looking north. So the station is behind the photographer. So when DART built this station, They knew that a trail was going to be connected at some point. Also, you can see there's already people walking back through here. But this is the connection that DART built years ago. They've been waiting for us to connect. So we're just going to tie right into their station. And that very quickly was a walk through the alignment. Again, we are going through just contract approval now. We're going through Park Board and Council. We're hoping to get this contract underway in May, which means you should start seeing construction, this summer once the crews get out and are mobilized. And so with that, I can just take any questions anyone may have.
You have questions yet? That's a lot.
Yeah, I know this was a lot.
Skillman, the most challenging piece of the project.
Yeah, Skillman, if I heard the question correctly, yeah, getting across Skillman is the most challenging. Everything else we can manage, and even getting across Abrams is not as difficult. It's just when we get up to Skillman, there's like I said, there's a lot of stuff in the way, and so that's why we have to kind of drop south and use Skillman and Church to make the connection.
So on Skillman, will those be like Jersey barriers that kind of separate the traffic from the trail? How will that work?
I don't think there's a Jersey barrier the entire length of Skillman. So there's one there now nearest the intersection. I'm sorry, I can't remember that cross street that's north of Church. But it'll be like a very wide sidewalk. But I don't think you're going to, I need to check the plans to be sure. But I don't think you've got a Jersey barrier the whole way down.
So when you say wide sidewalk, is it like the Flagpole Hill Trail when you're going by the Hill Station?
Something similar, yeah, something similar. There's a section that's nearest the White Rock Station where it's very narrow, but this will be wider, at least 10 feet. So we'll have a little bit more room to work with, but it's going to be very similar in that you're kind of right next to the roadway.
But you're off the runway.
Have there been traffic studies done in terms of the crossing at Skillman and how much traffic would go through? Because I know that on Ardelia, we have two of them, and there's probably not as much traffic on Ardelia.
So I don't think there were traffic studies done since we're not taking lanes off. We're not doing a mid-block crossing. Like for Ardelia, we would do a traffic impact analysis, or we do a warrant study to look at the traffic to warrant the signal. Since we're already using existing signals, we're just making modifications to the intersections. So I don't think there were any studies done to look at traffic volumes on either of those streets.
Sure. Did you hear that, Jared? On the alley?
I did not. Would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, on the alley connection, how many homes, like their driveways?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Let me scroll back up here. There are a few. Maybe 5 or 6.
That'd be similar to at Ardelia on the existing trail.
Here we are. There's about 6 homes in between where the trail enters the alley to where it exits the alley. There's about 6 or 7. I'm sorry, was there another question?
I just was saying that would be similar to what you have already on the existing trail by that little substation at Ardelia.
Yeah, it's very similar. Yeah, it's very similar to that. We've done this over on the existing section. We did it for a little bit on Flagpole Hill Trail where when you come out of the Sopak Trench, and then on North Haven, we've had to do it a couple of times as we go down the corridor.
Can you talk a little just to the connection of the funding? Is it scope singularly the Lake Highlands Trail area, these changes in the chart deck, or does it go a little beyond that? In particular, what strikes me initially is whatever the westernmost point, what you presented today is, at some point, I assume connects to North Haven or something else, right? And I guess
Yeah,
where this money ends and someone else's money begins, and if there's
so this is probably the best map I've got. So if I'm answering correctly, so the trail connects. So on the west, you've got the existing White Rock Creek Trail. Here's Greenville Avenue. This green line is the existing section. So we're connecting in there, south of Walnut Hill. We come across. We tie into the existing section of the Lake Highlands Trail north of the high school. Then we're tying in on the south end to the trail that's along Watercrest Park at the town center, and that trail connects. Yeah, I don't think my map shows this. That trail goes south and now connects to the White Rock Creek Trail and down near like Merriman Parkway. So now you've got a loop through this part of Lake Highlands.
But the funding is just for the Lake Highlands Trail, $8 million.
If I heard you correctly, but yes, the funding is just for the Lake Highlands Trail. What we're seeing here, kind of in yellow and orange.
Yeah, so conceptually, and I guess the question that we're trying to get to the answer is, as far as other connectivity and other trails, they have their own funding, but the goal, from what I understand, with the Parks Department and city manager and council, is to get them connected and to
Correct.
creative ideas and some things that we have here to do that.
So this project is funded to make these connections I just described. We staff, and being City of Dallas County, and the Council of Governments are looking at how do we go north and how do we go east. It gets tough because we start running out of corridors real fast. I mean, this part of town's landlocked. We're not blessed with a lot of creek corridors or encore corridors that we aren't already using. So we are looking at other ways that we can get better connectivity, more creatively, I guess. But
Yeah, but I think with these two connections here, it'll open us up to the Cotton Trail and a lot of and the lake quite a bit.
yeah, I mean, effectively through these two connections and connections to White Rock Creek, you're connected to the rest of the system. You can go north and get up into far north Dallas, Plano, Richardson. You can head down to the lake and get into town, get onto the trails that go over by Mockingbird Station over to Katy. And then with the trails we're building south of White Rock Lake, you can get down into the forest. So.
Other questions? One of the questions that was asked earlier, which I'd like to bring back up because I'd love to hear more about the answer. So where does the Parks Department money stop with the Lake Highlands Trail? And where does a Friends group start? At what point do we have the ability, in terms of this plan, to be able to say, well, did we get a dual recycling trash receptacle rather than just a trash? Or can we add a park bench here or a seating area? Where does that type of thing?
So for this project, kind of where we're at now is, this is, city and federal funding to build it. Now, once it's built, that's where you as the Friends group come in to look at betterments. And that's when we would have, agreements between the park department and yourself on who's, outlining what responsibility, the city will take on. And I think this was discussed a little earlier. The city will, of course, start maintaining all of this. The agreements we have with Encore and DART is that, once they license their right of way to us for use, we maintain the entire width of the corridor. But then once it's built, that's when we can start looking at, okay, well, can we do any benches? Can we do any plantings? I think that was mentioned earlier. It's going to be tough because it's Encore, but we'd have to look at, kind of what's permissible, and then we can start working from there.
And does this plan include some seating areas and things like that at this point, or is this just connecting everything together?
This is just primarily the connection. I haven't seen all the bid alternates with the bids where they came in, if they can build in any of these little respites that were shown earlier. But basically, we're just going to get the trail done, and then we'll come back later and start doing improvements.
And there could be money from other sources for those betterments besides just relying on the Friends Group, correct?
Correct. We have our needs inventory that feeds into our bond program. We're all preparing now for the next bond, which should be in the next couple of years. And that's when we can start getting a little more capital improvements for these betterments.
And I know that's one thing that Councilman Magoo is very passionate about, is right now start thinking about big things for Lake Highlands that we would want in that bond package.
Yeah.
So as a trails, we do really want to see something big, like a pump track. I know was brought up at one point, or playground areas that we can possibly have, just things like that might require more than just $5 here and $5 there.
Right.
Other questions? Jared, do you mind staying on while we go through our survey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll just stay on. I'll stop sharing, but I'll stay on the call.
Okay. Somehow I need to be posted. Jared, do you see a setting that says stop being host or let someone else host?
Let me look just a second. I don't see it right away.
Or to stop sharing? Okay, I think I just found it. Sorry. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this again. A lot of this, Jared already went through actually. So there have been some changes. But some of the things we want to talk about is neighborhood notification and what we need to do as a friends group to make sure the neighbors are on board and want to have the trail. So these are my kids. Actually, I just ran into his parents coming for their daughter basketball game. So, we need to let the neighborhood know that this is happening, this is coming, that it's a good thing. So these are some different slides that have changed a little bit. Taken some creative license on a few of them. Elaborating. Jared, if you see anything that looks off, please let me know. But these are a lot of the drawings that have been done. And you can see that over at the Arbor Park, we'll go alongside Skillman here in that short area. And then I thought it was going to be Jersey barriers. That was in one of the original designs. It sounds like that's not planned. And so for the survey, we did have a lot of neighborhood organizations participate. And so you can see some of the names there. Everyone from the Lake Highlands Estates neighborhood, which they have a dedicated trail person in their neighborhood association, which is something we're going to want to recommend, which is a good idea. The Lake Highlands Community Garden, they definitely want to see some things like that. Triathlon clubs, Junior Women's League, which has the 5K coming up, that uses the trail. And then a lot of the neighborhood associations that border. Also, the Lake Highlands PID, they have a stake in this because they want to make Lake Highlands. And so this is what we did. We surveyed the neighbors, and these are the top items that came out. So benches and places to sit, more than half. Water fountains, which, Jared, can you talk about water fountains and what the possibility is there for water and for irrigation with plants?
We just have to look at where along the corridor it's being proposed. If it's an encore, it's probably going to be a non-starter. But there may be some other areas, or if it's just outside of encore, maybe just on the edge of the property where it's not technically owned by them, there may be opportunities there. But then we just have to look at, how close are the existing water lines, that type of thing, and then just gets into maintenance. So
children's activities, playground equipment, recycling receptacles. That was a big ask. Art installations. I know one of the things Councilman Magoo has said a few times, which I think is a great idea, is if you look at all the power boxes, that are just a square or rectangle box, doing some type of art installation on them, painting them, so that way they're friendlier looking rather than steel or stainless steel box. Yeah,
My understanding is just commission her to create.
Yep. Workout stations, push-up stations, sit-up stations, things like that. Community billboard. I know they have that at Perry Moss Park and some of the trailheads where you can see about neighborhood meetings and what's going on. Bike repair stands like the one we have out front. There are some other things. Lighting. I've heard from neighbors that lighting in terms of having like light poles along the trail is a kind of non-starter because they don't want that ambient light coming into their backyards. One of the comments at our last meeting was that the lighting that a lot of people wanted was on the trail, like possible little, circular solar panels or something that doesn't need to run electricity but can illuminate the trail. Landscaping, of course, that's important. Trash cans, dog poop bag stations, and that's something that friends would purchase for later. Signage with Lake Highlands branding. We want everyone to know it's the Lake Highlands Trail. We want to have different areas where you enter the trail, some type of branding. Dog park, shaded areas. This next one was interesting, an off-road pump track. So that's basically a little bicycle track that you don't have to pedal really to go through. Kind of like a skate park in a way. So kind of an interesting thing, or the next one, mini skate. What ideas do you have? What hits your mind of like, hey, the trail's going to need this? You just went through it. So more trash cans, recycling possibly, more regular pickups as far as the receptacle. One thing that we're looking for volunteers, again, we're looking for a lot of volunteers, is kind of trail captains, like whether it's a family or a neighborhood association to kind of adopt part of the trail. So that way we could have a contract or agreement where someone would come out on a weekly basis to do some of those things, which could help. So we have Jared White, who's with the Parks Department on the call here on the Zoom. Today is specifically about Friends of Lake Highlands Trail and the new trail extension. However, we talked a little earlier about how this trail is going to connect with White Rock Trail, which connects to SOPAC and so on. And we have a sharing group called the Dallas Trails Coalition, where all the trail organizations are getting together to try to figure things out. Like, okay, well, if SOPAC has these cool lights, we need to get them in Lake Highlands. Or, yeah, go ahead. Sure. It is considered a Lake Highlands Trail, and I think that, Jared, I don't know if it has a formal name, but the Watercrest Park extension, maybe?
A lot of these trails have, and this has actually been coming up quite a bit. A lot of these are kind of, they're not formal names. A lot of them are like placeholders. So like when we are planning and putting lines on maps, we assign names to something. Um, all this is considered, from my point of view, Lake Highlands Trail. There's various phases of it, but these names can change if there's a desire from the community.
Is there any type, where's the best place to go? If I'm on my bike on a trail trying to find my way around, what's the best website to find an accurate map of the trail?
If I heard correctly, the question is that there's an accurate map of the trail. So we're working on that. So the issue is we haven't had the staff or the resources, just to be honest with y'all, to have these interactive maps or even printed maps. The last ones that were printed were from 2008, and there was an update from there. We have more planning staff now, so we're working on getting something that's more internet based and more mobile, so that if you can just pull it up on your phone, so it's not just a static printed map that is dated, as soon as it's printed. It's a process, and we're getting there. I don't have a better answer than that, unfortunately.
And I know one of the big questions is how is this going to tie in all that? We talked about it a few times. Wayfinding, knowing which trail you're on, where it is a big deal for the Dallas Trails Coalition. We're working with the Loop. So what we're envisioning, from what I know, is to have the Loop Trail with its own signage, so you're on the Loop Trail, but then have each individual trail, its trailheads and maps. But at the park, there's like a layout of the trail map to see it. But wayfinding is definitely part of it. Did you have a question or comment? Yeah, and I know with the North Haven Bridge that's going over 75, that was one of my comments. I said, well, are you going to say the North Haven Trail? So you get some recognition for that. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sure. Yep. Other amenities that kind of are important that we didn't talk about and missing. I did get a question on chat here, and it was bathrooms. So I know that having bathroom areas, like typically you'd have in a parking lot. You have a parking lot, restrooms, and like stone tables. Is that any possibility for the Lake Highlands Trail anywhere? Or do you see any parking that we'd want, or are we just looking at a pretty bare bones trail?
So much of the Lake Highlands Trail part we're talking about involves the encore. And so specifically in that, certainly has the limitations there. I mean, certainly great suggestions. We'd love to see that, but as Jared said, that's kind of on the start of the process.
Yeah, the only place I could envision that would be somewhere where we have a parking lot, which is probably the only place that makes sense. I'm sure we all agree we don't want travel.
But I mean, that is something we should look at in the law. That's just a huge expense.
Yeah. Other thoughts on amenities? So the other question we asked is, which activities would you like to see? Because we know the trail should be multi-purpose, not just biking, riding. It should be something for neighborhoods to enjoy. It is a park, so you can't take that out. Some parks, connect with Sundays in the park, trail tours, cleanup events. I've been talking with the councilman for some time about having a trail tour. We talked about that before COVID. So we plan on doing that as parts of the trail start to open up. do some ribbon cuttings, councilmen get out there and ride around, show people, do some important to let people see the trails, use the trail. More community gardens, that was what someone wanted. Group activities and open spaces, which we thought was interesting. So if you're having a little fitness area or some type of seating area, if you had a way that people could meet up there, that ultimately to have community events, that could be a fun place just to meet up place.
I haven't seen that in one
Yeah. Yeah, I know over at Schofield, I think they have a community garden at the school. So I'm not sure what the possibility is, but small trail. Yeah, and I think that'll be one thing that we want to do is see which areas and things like that. Walking and running groups, again, going back. This was one that, it didn't come up a lot, but safety is important to people. So we want to make sure there is some type of lighting if possible that's not obtrusive to homeowners. That we do have, not, I haven't seen any police reports on.
Hey, Brian, can I jump in for a second regarding police and security when you have a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if y'all have noticed on the other trails, we have our 911 trail markers. If you've been on White Rock Creek or White Rock Lake, what this is working with the Dallas Police Department and Dallas Fire Rescue. So once the trail goes in, we'll have the same markers go up for the new sections that are built. And it's code based, so it may say something like LHT, Lake Highlands Trail, sign 100, whatever the numbering sequence may be. And so what happens is if something happens, you can call, and if you say I'm at LHT 100 Dallas Fire Rescue, it's entered into their computer aided dispatch, so they know where you're at and how to get to you. So that's one way that we're working on that. And then also if there are issues with in the existing homeless encampments, we can work with the Office of Homeless Solutions and code enforcement. We're doing that on other trails as well.
Yeah, and good point on the finding signage.
That's really its contact, its presence, which is so see the ballpark, so very quick.
Yeah, and I think as Jared pointed out, that if there are repeated calls, but having lived backing up to the trail for a long time in Lake Highlands, I've never seen any issues. An event similar to what the Dallas Green Fest was, community billboards, children activities, play areas, 5Ks, which we have seen, bike races, egg hunts, community walk. One other thing that wasn't mentioned was a way to do outreach to the local schools. I know there's Wallace Elementary, pretty close to the trail. There's Schofield, so there's schools. And so it could be good for education. Good days, things like that. So other different activities, like Dallas trails, get out there, do some different things. Walking step challenges, which if away from trick or treat on the trail. I know we've done it at Tom Thumb, the Public Improvement District, where it's a trunk or treat. You could do a trail or treat. When I used to live on the trail, we used to put up like 8-foot Santas, Christmas type stuff. So decorate the trail. Connection events, which we'll talk about one later. We're going to do a Bike to Work Day on May 20th, which is officially Bike to Work Day. So we'll leave from Ferndale, we'll get to some of these areas we're talking about, some leaders. crowd in front, trying to get the councilman in some spandex. He said he won't wear spandex, but he will show up and run. It is over near the intersection of Church and Ferndale, that trailhead. Shaded structures, musical crossings. I thought that was an interesting idea. You have sound as you're crossing instead of just fun stuff. Any other events that you think that we should think about?
That's what I saw just.
Yeah, well, one good thing that I think is a good thing, even as a cyclist, is that they do make the trail somewhat serpentine, so it goes in a different pattern than straight for the most part. That way, it does cut down on to race bikes.
Yeah, that's good. That's
So we right. So we do have a few. This is the volunteers. So people that want to participate. Number one is beautification and cleanups. We hear that a lot. Leadership board, be a trail captain, trail champion, neighborhood outreach, and support communication. Those are kind of the things we're looking for. So taking some of this feedback, we've decided to move forward with some of this right off the bat. One of the things we want to do in that area, we talked about a few times over near Watercrest Park, is to do a trail cleanup. There is one at Hamilton Park, which is part of the Dallas Parks Day, and that's the 23rd in Hamilton Park. We'll be doing a lot of good stuff there. But we thought that we'd take care of, the park down the street from us with the Lake Highlands Trail, and kind of walk that extension. Which, yeah, go ahead. So I believe that was approved already. So they're going to be working on that. So that should improve quite a bit. And I hope that we can get into that area a little bit and pull out some of the styrofoam. Right. So we're looking for volunteers for that. We can scan or go to our Facebook page. We're working on a website. I think in June that'll start to launch and be ready to communicate a little bit more. This is a happy hour, so we're trying to raise some funds for some of these things. And we will share this presentation with everyone that signed in and came. And then Bike to Work Day, May 20th, so we'll get out on the trail a little bit, show everyone around. I'm going to ride to downtown Dallas via the Santa Fe Trail. Downtown. And do you have other questions?
So you just mentioned this trail.
Yeah, Jared, would you mind sharing that deck with me so I could share that with the group?
Yeah, sure. I can send it to you.
Okay. And this isn't an official Parks Board meeting, or Parks Department, or even City Council. This is just Friends of Lake Highlands Trail. But we did want to make it public. We did want to have it streamed live and all that, so that way the public's aware of it. So, yeah,
that's not
sure.
okay to share.
Right. Yep, exactly. What other questions before we wrap it up tonight?
Do you have the North Haven Bridge east? Is that connection?
So the North Haven Bridge, the one that goes over 75?
Yes.
Okay. Jared, can you tell us what happens over at the North Haven?
After you go over short.
Yeah. So not going towards the North Haven Trail west, but coming this way. Could you eliminate that?
So is the question how the connections are made for the North Haven Bridge on the east side of Central?
Correct.
Okay. So where North Haven Road intersects with Central, there's a big spiral that's under construction now. So that goes across the freeway, and we're threading the bridge in between. There's kind of a mid-rise office building, and there's a big shopping center there at Royal and Central. So we're threading the trail in between those two. It touches down on the back side of the shopping center. We have a bridge it's already in. You can see it now. We have a bridge over White Rock Creek, and it spans the creek and ties in where the Cottonwood Creek Trail intersects with White Rock Creek. So we've been calling this the low 5 instead of the high 5 because we have trails coming in from 5 different directions. The other part of that will be the SOPAC Trail. If y'all have ridden that, it ends at Greenville at Meadow over by Royal Oaks Country Club. We've got funding through the federal government to extend that. So it's about another mile and a half. So we're working on get this design started. So the other component of that will be SOPAC will get extended up to that junction point behind the shopping center. So if you're finding yourself at that junction, you can go west across Central, north to far North Dallas, Plano, Richardson, south along White Rock Creek, or south along SOPAC.
So Jared, did that answer your question?
I think so.
I know conceptually it's hard to see
I
it all.
just know.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a map handy. I might, if you want to give me a second, I'll probably find one.
And so, Jared, you also said that over near Royal Oaks, it'll continue, where it now just kind of stops and comes down behind the.
Yeah, so it stops. SOPAC stops right there, just north of Greenville at Meadow. So that rail line keeps going. It does intersect with Encore over by Royal Oaks. But yeah, we got $4 million in federal funding and almost no funding needed from the city to extend that the rest of the way.
Awesome. And where will that terminate?
The SOPAC will end. Okay, so think of the shopping center that's on that corner of Royal and Central. There's like 24-hour fitness. There's the Studio Grill, all that. So SOPAC will come in behind that shopping center and tie in on the backside. I'm trying to find a map real quick. TxDOT created one since they're one of our funding partners. I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick while we're talking.
What's the time frame on that extension that we just talked about?
I'm working on an RFQ now, going through consultant selection to get that design underway. My intent is to spend the summer getting contracts ready. I don't think I can get to council before June, but I need to get contracts negotiated, spend the summer doing that. So as soon as we hit August, when council comes out of recess, get those contracts approved by Park Board and Council and start design this fall.
So, I mean, you can tell just by that answer that the Parks Department is excited about taking these trails to trails, connecting everything, looking for fun. Did you get a chance to find that map?
Oh, still looking. Hang on.
What other questions? Were you able to hear that, Jared? It was, how does the SOPAC Trail connect to the Brookhaven Bridge?
So on the north side of the shopping center, here, hang on, let's do it this way. Let me just get Google Earth up here. Hang on.
You want to share the screen?
Yeah, let me do that. I can't find this graphic, so we'll just do it this way.
Okay, you should be able to.
Okay, this second. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Just a second.
While he's bringing that up, other questions? Anything else on top of your mind? Is this exciting? You guys excited about this? Yeah.
Are y'all seeing Google Earth up on your screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. Here's Central Expressway. Here we have North Haven Road. This is the JCC on this side. Sorry, let me pan around here. This is the shopping center I keep talking about. So this is Royal at Central. And you can already see construction. So we'll go from west to east. So if you're coming in from the west, you'll come down North Haven. You will enter into this big spiral that takes you up and over. And you see this area that's disturbed on the east side. So there's like a Sherwin-Williams and some other, maybe on this Jason's Deli or something's right here. So we're threading in a structure right here. Then we land right down in here on the backside of this shopping center, because you see, and then we tie in to this bridge that's already been put across White Rock Creek. So we come across White Rock Creek. This is the big junction with Cottonwood Creek Trail. The spirals around. This is all in place now. This graphic's a little old. But it ties in technically to the Cottonwood Creek Trail just north of the big intersection. Then SOPAC, you pan out a little bit. I'll kind of zoom back out, then I'll zoom back in. So SOPAC stops way back here. You can see this little hairpin down here at Greenville and Meadow. But we're going to just keep going, follow along the remnants of the DART line, or the rail line that DART owns. We have to squeeze in. It gets a little tight. We got to squeeze in here next to Royal Oaks on the DART line. Go underneath Royal. This big triangle, this is all Royal Oaks. That's just not part of the golf course. It's just part of their property. Come along. Again, we're just paralleling DART, and then we can slip right underneath this bridge. We'll come up. There's a bit of a hill. We'll come up, and we'll tie in right here. So you're going to have a big junction on this side, and you'll have a big junction on the north side. This should be complete, fingers crossed, late. We think it's going to be late this year, but probably early next year, early, winter, early spring next year. Not for SOPAC, just for the North Haven, just to be clear, for the North Haven Bridge.
Someone entrepreneurial.
Sun and Ski is converging. Yeah. So they should be able to do pretty well. And that's something, the kind of thing the friends groups want to do. It's like, let's ride from Sun and Ski and check out the new bridge. Did you hear that? The question was, when will the main part of the North Haven Bridge be installed over 75?
So that's going to start probably within the next couple of months. All I'm saying is, if y'all happen to be over at that shopping center, and if you go along the back side of it, you might see the deck that's being constructed on the back end of the shopping center. So, so this building right here, they're using this back parking lot for staging. And so the bridge deck is being delivered, and they're assembling it in sections. So the idea is they'll build the bridge back here. Then overnight, they'll close the freeway down and slide it into place over the freeway. So this is going to take some time for them to get this fully built. It's a cable stayed bridge. So they got to get all the arches and all the cabling and whatnot, but they're actively building the bridge right now behind this shopping center.
And if you haven't followed the North Haven Trail on their website or on Facebook, social media, definitely should, because they have drone footage that they take pretty frequently that shows how it's building and fly the drone over. So it's pretty cool. Any other questions? We are kind of bumping up against our time. There's no more questions. Let's give Jared a round of applause and say thank you. I hope your summer, spring, fall, winter allergies resolve themselves.
Thanks. They're killing me. But let's keep in touch. We're all just kind of getting started. I mean, once we go to construction, you're going to have a whole new trail. And so let's just keep these conversations going.
Absolutely. And Jared does participate in the Dallas Trails Coalition. So he comes out and kind of updates us on what's going on with the city. So it's very important. And yeah, if you want to sit in on these meetings. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yes, over there.